I found Rome built of brick and left it made of marble.
That's easily one of the most famous, most brazen, and, well, most powerful quotes in Western history.
Yeah.
Attributed, of course, to the man we now know as Augustus.
And our mission today, diving deep into this source material, is to figure out what that quote really meant. Because it wasn't just about buildings, was it?
Not at all. It was a promise, a massive claim about transformation. Total transformation.
Yeah, so we need to track how this young boy, Gaius Octavius, becomes Augustus, the, revered founder of the Roman Empire, and how, for over 40 years, he pulled off this incredible constitutional trick.
Destroying the Republic.
While convincing everyone he was actually saving it. It's fascinating.
It is. It's the ultimate political paradox. And this deep dive, it really has to focus on the key constitutional novelty he brought in. I mean, Julius Caesar, he seized the dictatorship, okay, extreme, but it had historical precedent, sort of.
Right, it was a known, if temporary, office.
Exactly. But Augustus, he invented the Principate. He crafted this whole system that was, well, autocratic in practice, but he wrapped it up so carefully in republican laws and titles.
Like a disguise.
Precisely. A blueprint that amazingly secured peace, the famous Pax Romana, and defined Roman imperial rule for centuries.
Okay, let's unpack this journey then. It's a path paved, it seems, equally with golden blood.
Right. We should start with the context. Born Gaius Octavius, 63 BC, his connections were always top tier. His mother, Atia, Julius Caesar's niece.
And his biological father died quite early.
Yeah, 59 or 58 BC.
Mm-hmm.
But then his mother married Lucius Marcius Philippus. A big deal, former consul, influential.
So Philippus wasn't just wealthy, he was politically successful. He must have been a pretty important role model for young Octavian, showing him how to navigate the cutthroat politics of the late Republic.
Absolutely. Though the connection through his grandmother, Julius Caesar's sister, she played a huge part in raising him too.
And that connection paid off massively when Caesar was assassinated in 44 BC.
Oh, hugely. Octavian was just 18, off doing military training in Illyria. He comes straight back to Rome, claims his inheritance. Because Caesar's will, it didn't just leave him property.
No, it adopted him, made him his principal heir.
Adoptive son. Game changer.
Absolutely a game changer. Taking the name Gaius Julius Caesar, overnight, he gets his great-uncle's legacy, his huge network of political clients, the immense wealth. In that chaos after the Ides of March, it gave him instant credibility way beyond his years.
And he didn't waste a second turning that name into power,
Mm.
using money. He launched what some historians call a fiscal shock and awe campaign.
Tell us about that. The sources detail this incredibly brazen move at Brundisium.
Yeah, he just walks in and appropriates this massive war chest, 700 million sesterces. Money stockpiled for Caesar's planned Parthian campaign.
Wait, hang on. This isn't just pocket change. This is public money, state funds for defense. Wasn't he basically committing grand theft against the Republic? What was the risk there?
Oh, the risk was immense. But the payoff? Well, the payoff was potentially sovereignty itself. He wasn't just stealing, he was buying loyalty, and faster than anyone else could react.
Right.
He also grabbed the annual tribute coming in from the Near Eastern provinces. So suddenly, he's the guy who can reliably pay the legions, pay the veterans. We hear about 3,000 veterans immediately getting a bonus, 500 denarii each. Huge sum.
So he's forcing the established players like Mark Antony to actually take this teenager seriously?
Exactly. He's leveraging cash liquid assets to turn that inherited name into real military muscle.
And that financial power, that military muscle, it forces the formation of the Second Triumvirate in 43 BC. Him, Mark Antony, and Lepidus.
And crucially, unlike the First Triumvirate, which was more of a, backroom deal.
Your handshake agreement.
Yeah. This one was formal, legalized by the Senate, the Lex Titia. They were legally constituted rulers, essentially dictators.
A formal alliance, yes, but its first big act was horrific, the proscriptions.
Horrific. And technically illegal despite their legal status. It was ruthless. A way to raise money for their legions, definitely. But also, critically, to wipe out political enemies. Anyone with lingering Republican sympathies.
The numbers are just staggering. Somewhere between 130 and 300 senators, maybe up to 2,000 equites the knight class outlawed, property seized, lives forfeit.
And it's fascinating how the historical sources, even then, start to diverge on who was really driving this bloodbath, who bears the most blame.
The spin starts immediately.
Right. Later writers, like Velleius Paterculus, they try to soften Octavian's role, suggesting, oh, it was really Antony and Lepidus pushing the purges.
But contemporary accounts, people like Appian, and the moral critiques you get from Plutarch.
They make it pretty clear Octavian was just as calculating, just as ruthless as the others, if not more so.
Plutarch's description of them basically trading allies' lives, it's chilling. It shows just how little personal morality mattered. Octavian lets Cicero be prescribed Cicero, the great defender of the Republic who'd actually mentored him early on.
While Antony allows his own uncle to be put on the list, it really speaks volumes about loyalty versus political necessity at that moment.
It was purely transactional.
Purely. And once those internal enemies were dealt with, liquidated, the triumvirs turned their attention outward to crush the last real Republican resistance, Caesar's assassins, Brutus and Cassius.
Which they do at the Battle of Philippi in 42 BC. That defeat basically spells the end for the Republican cause as a military force.
But internal peace? That was still a long way off. There was widespread anger, especially over land confiscations needed to settle all these veterans.
Which leads to the Perusian War in 40 BC, Octavian facing a rebellion led by Antony's own brother, Lucius Antonius, and Antony's wife, Fulvia.
And Octavian's response after winning that siege? Absolutely definitive. He spares the leaders, surprisingly, but he executes 300 captured senators and equestrians.
On the Ides of March.
On the Ides of March, the anniversary of Caesar's assassination. A very clear, very bloody message against any future opposition. Calculated terror.
We also see him using marriage purely as a political tool around this time.
Oh, completely. Brief marriage to Scribonia. She gives him his only biological child, Julia. Then he divorces Scribonia the very day Julia is born.
To secure a better alliance.
Exactly. Marrying Livia Drusilla in 38 BC. A powerhouse. Politically sharp, connected, and crucially, mother to Tiberius, a name that's going to loom large over the succession plans for decades.
So he's constantly juggling threats and alliances. Next up, the war against Sextus Pompeius.
All right, Pompey the Great's son. He controls Sicily, Sardinia, and critically, Rome's grain supply. A major threat.
So Octavian's victory over Sextus in 36 BC is pivotal.
Hugely pivotal.
Yes.
Secures a Western Mediterranean, ends the starvation threat in Rome, and gives him the political capital to finally sideline Lepidus.
Right, Lepidus gets stripped of all power except the largely ceremonial role of Pontifex Maximus.
And just like that, the stage is set. Only two giants left standing, Octavian and Antony. The clash was inevitable.
Which brings us to the final showdown, Actium. And Octavian's use of propaganda here, it's just brilliant.
A masterpiece, absolutely. Antony's bogged down with military failures in Parthia. He's getting deeper and deeper with Cleopatra in Egypt.
And Octavian paints him as this corrupted Roman, someone who's gone native, orientalized, abandoned Roman virtue.
He frames the whole conflict brilliantly, not as a civil war against a fellow Roman triumvir, but as Rome defending itself against this foreign, decadent queen.
And the stroke of genius, the publicity stunt with Antony's will, forcibly seizing it from the Temple of the Vestal Virgins and publishing it.
Whether the will was entirely genuine or creatively edited, it perfectly confirmed Octavian's narrative. It supposedly laid out Antony's wish to be buried in Alexandria with Cleopatra, detailed how he planned to give away Roman territories to his children with her.
It painted Antony as a traitor, someone ready to diminish Rome itself.
Sealed his fate politically back in Rome. So the Senate, skillfully guided by Octavian, doesn't declare war on Antony, a Roman citizen.
No, they declare war on Cleopatra's regime in Egypt. Clever.
Very. The resulting battle, Actium in 31 BC. The scale was immense. Maybe 400,000 men involved, vast fleets on both sides.
And Actium was decisive.
Totally. Antony and Cleopatra defeated. They flee back to Egypt, where both eventually commit suicide.
And the aftermath really underlines Octavian's cold political calculus. He spares Cleopatra's children by lets them be raised in Rome, actually, but Caesarian?
Cleopatra's son by Julius Caesar himself. He's executed immediately.
The advice he supposedly got is chilling. 2 Caesars are one too many.
He'd use his link to the great Caesar to climb to power, right? He wasn't about to let a potential rival with an even stronger blood ties survive. End of story for Caesarion.
Okay, so by 30 BC, all rivals are gone. The civil wars are finally over. Octavian controls Egypt's vast wealth. He commands the loyalty of over 50 legions. The challenge now is, how do you transition from being a military dictator, which he effectively was, to being a legitimate ruler without, ending up like Caesar on the Senate floor?
Exactly. How do you avoid triggering those same fears? This is where the constitutional illusion really begins. The invention of the Principate. He understood the Roman elite. The people, too, were exhausted by war. But they still loved the idea of the republic, the traditions, the forms.
So he puts on a show, a calculated performance of restoration, the first settlement, 27 BC.
Magnificent political theater. He stands before the Senate, makes this grand gesture of returning all his powers, relinquishing control of provinces, armies, even saying he'd step down from being consul every year. The message: I, your savior, have restored the republic.
But hang on, you call the Principate a constitutional fiction? If he really gave up power, how did it stick? Why didn't the Senate, take him at his word and run with it? Was patronage really stronger than political freedom?
It wasn't just patronage, though that was huge. It was structural coercion, cleverly disguised. Yeah. Yes, he appeared to return the provinces to senatorial control, but he kept personal control over the most chaotic, the most strategically vital ones: Hispania, Gaul, Syria, Cilicia, and the big one, Egypt. These were the places that needed constant military presence.
The places with the legions.
Exactly. Our sources suggest he directly controls something like 20 legions. Compare that to maybe 5 or 6 scattered across all the peaceful senatorial provinces.
So the Senate could govern places like North Africa or Macedonia, sure, but they had absolutely no military muscle to challenge him.
None whatsoever. He held the keys to the army and, through Egypt especially, the treasury, all while wearing this Republican mask.
And it's during this first settlement, January 16th, 27 BC, that the Senate grants him that unique honorific, Augustus.
The revered one, the illustrious one. It sets him apart, lifts him above all other Romans. And yeah, that's the date historians usually point to as the symbolic end of the Republic and the start of the empire.
But crucially, right after that, he did keep holding the consulship year after year.
He did initially. And that became a problem. It highlighted his dominance, too, obviously. Plus, it clogged up the highest office, right? It limited opportunities for other ambitious senators who needed that consulship for their own careers. It started breeding resentment.
So he needed to refine the illusion, which leads to the second settlement in 23 BC. This is a real masterclass in consolidating power without holding the traditional top job.
Absolutely. He voluntarily gives up the annual consulship, steps aside, lets others have their turn. Expands his patronage network that way, too. Smart move.
But what he gets in return, that's what fundamentally changes the state's legal structure.
2 immense powers granted for life: Imperium Proconsulare Meus and Tribunicia Potestas.
Okay, let's break this down, because this is the real engine room of the empire, legally speaking. Imperium Proconsulare Meus, what did that mean in practice?
Greater proconsular authority. It meant supreme military command across the entire empire, including the provinces technically still run by the Senate. This was revolutionary.
So no matter where a Roman army won a battle, even if it was in a senatorial province,
Augustus was legally the supreme commander. The victory was credited to him, which meant, crucially, only he could be awarded a triumph, the ultimate military honor. Maybe Tiberius got one later, but that was basically it. It cemented his control over military glory and, therefore, loyalty.
And the second power, Tribunicia Potestas, the power of a tribune of the plebs, also for life. Why was that so vital?
Well, historically, the tribune was sacrosanct. Their person was inviolable. So first, it gave Augustus absolute personal safety, protected him legally from any other magistrate's authority.
Okay.
But even more importantly, it gave him the tribune's traditional right to veto any action by any other magistrate or assembly.
So combine those two.
Yeah.
Military supremacy through the Imperium and legislative control plus veto power through the Tribunicia Potestas.
And you have all the real power that used to be split among different Republican offices, all concentrated in one person, permanently. And yet he could still claim he was just the princeps.
First citizen.
Just the first among equals. It was brilliant.
Permanent, continuous, constitutionally unchallengeable power. Try to challenge him legally, vetoed by his tribune power. Try to raise a rival army, stripped of command by his supreme proconsular power.
Exactly. And this new constitutional stability was tested almost immediately. The sources tell us Augustus got seriously ill in early 23 BC. The whole regime seemed to teeter.
Which must have shown everyone, including Augustus himself, that this new system needed more than just a clever framework. It needed a clear, stable line of succession.
Definitely. His work wasn't finished yet. He needed an heir.
So the political maneuvering was, okay, complex, based on these legal fictions, but the tangible results for ordinary people in Rome and the provinces, They seem pretty revolutionary. He wasn't just tinkering with government structures, he was actually rebuilding the state.
Oh, absolutely. His grasp of economic and administrative reform was fundamental to making the Pax Romana work. He set up a much more stable system of direct taxation in the provinces, got rid of the old arbitrary tribute system that caused so much misery.
And this is where we see real systemic change. Ending private tax farming, getting rid of the public hanny. Why was that such a huge deal, politically and practically?
It was revolutionary. It tackled the systemic corruption that had plagued the Republic for generations. Under the Republic, these private companies, the publicans, would bid for the right to collect taxes in a province.
And then squeeze the locals for everything they could, pocketing the difference.
Exactly. It bred resentment, instability, even outright rebellion sometimes. Augustus replaces them with a salaried professional civil service, answerable to the state.
So, more stable revenue for Rome, less corruption, and presumably happier provinces makes the Pax Romana actually feel like peace, not just conquest.
Precisely. It made the empire function better for everyone involved except maybe the old tax farmers.
And then there was Egypt, annexed after Actium. That became a financial engine for the whole empire, didn't it?
Egypt was unique. It wasn't treated like other provinces. It was basically Augustus's personal property, his patrimonium, governed by a prefect, usually from the equestrian class, not a senator, reporting directly to him.
And its wealth.
Immense, reliable. The grain supply alone was vital for feeding Rome, but the overall agricultural wealth provided this enormous, steady income stream funding the empire's operations, crucially insulated from any senatorial meddling.
Beyond the money, he's focusing on infrastructure, daily life, roads.
Developed extensive road networks, yeah, and set up the first official state courier system, the Praefectus Vehiculorum, vital for communication, moving troops quickly across Italy and the provinces.
And within Rome itself, it was famously chaotic, crowded, prone to fires.
He brought order, established the first real police force, the cohortes urbanae, and the first organized firefighters, the vigils. Before him, public safety was pretty haphazard, often reliant on private gangs. Now, the state provided basic security.
Military stability was obviously key, too. He couldn't rely on just ad hoc funding or fluctuating loyalty anymore.
No. So he created the Aerarium Militare, a dedicated military treasury, specifically for paying active soldiers and, crucially, providing retirement benefits. He kickstarted it himself with a huge personal donation, 170 million sesterces.
So that institutionalizes the soldier's loyalty, not just to a general, but to the state, the system, which he controls.
Exactly. Guaranteed pension, guaranteed loyalty to the princeps.
And, of course, he formally establishes the Praetorian Guard in 27 BC. Initially his personal bodyguard, stationed just outside the city.
A critical development. That force, his personal guard, would eventually move inside Rome under Tiberius, becoming this incredibly powerful, sometimes disruptive political force, capable of making and breaking emperors for centuries to come.
Augustus seemed to understand that rebuilding wasn't just about structures and soldiers. It needed a moral, even spiritual dimension. He linked the chaos of the civil wars to neglecting the gods?
Yeah, he pushed this idea of moral and religious renewal, enacted the Lex Julia laws promoting marriage, encouraging the upper classes to have more children, penalizing adultery quite harshly.
Famously applied even to his own daughter, Julia, who was exiled under those laws.
Indeed. He also brought in laws against corruption by officials, and he made the restoration of religion incredibly visible, claimed to have restored 82 temples in just 1 year, 28 BC.
Overtly linking himself to traditional Roman piety, restoring divine favor through his rule.
It all reinforces the image. And that drive to rebuild leads us right back to that famous quote, "I found Rome of bricks, I leave to you one of marble." The building program was maybe his most visible, most enduring piece of propaganda.
It was literal, right? They did use a lot more marble, often as a veneer over concrete, giving the city this new monumental look.
Absolutely. But it was deeply metaphorical, too. Marble signifies strength, beauty, permanence, the permanence of his new order.
You see it in the big projects, the Forum of Augustus, dominated by the Temple of Mars, Altar Mars the Avenger.
Emphasizing military victory, divine payback for Caesar's death, and linking his family, the Julians, back to Rome's mythical founders, like Aeneas. Then there's his massive mausoleum, built early on, designed to house his dynasty for generations, projecting stability.
Even public entertainment venues get co-opted. Places like the Theater of Marcellus.
They physically enforced the new social hierarchy, different entrances, segregated seating areas based on rank, made the social order visible, concrete, or rather, marble-clad concrete.
But the absolute pinnacle of this visual propaganda, the masterpiece, as it's often called, has to be the Era Pacis, the altar of a destined peace, built between 13 and 9 BC.
Oh, definitely. It's not just a religious altar. It's like a political manifesto carved in stone. The friezes show Augustus, the imperial family, all processing solemnly.
And the details are deliberate.
Incredibly so. You see children shown prominently, clinging to their parents, a clear visual nod to those Lex Julia laws promoting family and childbirth. You see reliefs explicitly linking Augustus to Aeneas, to the mythical founding of Rome. It visually cements his legitimacy, his divine mandate.
The sheer beauty, the artistry, the traditional imagery, it all works together.
To celebrate the peace and prosperity he brought, yes. But also maybe to distract from the fundamental shift in power that had occurred. As one source notes, these beautiful marble monuments reflected a regime where the people, even the elite, had lost most of their real influence.
It's interesting, too, that while he built all this public splendor, his own house on the Palatine was apparently quite modest.
Relatively speaking, yes. It reinforced that carefully crafted image of the princeps, the first citizen, living simply rather than some Eastern-style despot living in opulent luxury.
We should also touch on his foreign policy, his military actions. There was significant expansion during his reign.
Oh, yes. Annexed places like Dalmatia, Pannonia, Noricum, completed the conquest of Hispania, Spain, which brought in massive new wealth, especially from gold mines like Las Medulas.
But he wasn't just about conquest. His diplomatic achievements were huge, too.
Definitely. Securing peace with Parthia, the big Eastern rival, in 20 BC. That was done through negotiation, not war. And he managed to get back the Roman standards that Crassus had lost so disastrously back in 53 BC.
A massive symbolic victory, restoring Roman honor without bloodshed. Hugely popular.
Hugely. But that expansionist phase, it did hit a brutal wall. AD 9, the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest.
Ah, Varus and the Lost Legions.
The stuff of nightmares for Augustus. 3 entire legions under Publius Quintilius Varus wiped out by an ambush led by the German chieftain Arminius. A catastrophic defeat.
They say Augustus was haunted by it, would beat his head against the wall, crying, "Quintilius Varus, give me back my legions."
Whether that's literal or not, the loss was profound. It effectively ended Roman ambitions to conquer Germany east of the Rhine, and it led directly to his famous advice to his successor.
Don't expand the empire further. Consolidate the borders along the Rhine and Danube.
Hold what you have.
Yeah.
That became the policy.
So Augustus reigns for nearly 50 years, an incredible run. But despite all his administrative brilliance, the one thing that consistently plagued him, his greatest political headache, was succession.
Absolutely. He was obsessed with establishing a stable dynasty, but he clearly favored his own bloodline, the Julian line, over the Claudian line, his wife Livia's family.
And the list of potential heirs who died young is, well, it's either incredibly tragic or deeply suspicious, depending on which ancient historian you read.
It's a depressing list. First, his nephew Marcellus, married to Augustus's daughter Julia, groomed for power, dies young. Then he turns to his close friend and brilliant general, Agrippa.
Right, Agrippa marries the widow Julia, gets immense power, runs the East.
Extremely capable. But he dies too, in 12 BC.
So the focus shifts again. To his grandsons, Julian, Agrippa's children, Gaius and Lucius Caesar.
Augustus clearly pins all his hopes on them, adopts them, grooms them from childhood. They are the designated heirs.
And yet, both die, mysteriously, within about 2 years of each other, between AD 2 and 4.
And this is where that shadow of Livia Drusilla really looms large in the historical tradition. Tacitus, Cassius Dio. They record these persistent rumors. Unproven, of course, but persistent.
Rumors that Livia systematically, maybe through poison, cleared the path for her own son, Tiberius.
Exactly, removing obstacle after obstacle, Marcellus, Agrippa, Gaius, Lucius, until only her son from her first marriage, Tiberius Claudius Nero, was left standing.
Let's talk about that conflict in the sources, though. Why would later historians, especially senators like Tacitus, be so quick to believe or promote the idea of Livia as this scheming poisoner? Couldn't it just have been illness, bad luck?
Well, it makes for a cracking story, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Political melodrama. Livia was undeniably powerful, intelligent, politically astute, a woman operating with immense influence behind the throne. That made her an easy target for suspicion, for resentment from the traditional male elite.
So the rumors might reflect aristocratic anxiety about female influence and dynastic succession as much as actual evidence.
Quite possibly. Whether she actually used a poisoned fig, as one story goes, or just skillfully played the political cards she was dealt as heirs kept dying. The persistence of the rumor tells us a lot about Roman elite anxieties.
Regardless of how it happened, the deaths of Gaius and Lucius left Augustus in a real bind. He's running out of Julian heirs.
His only other surviving grandson, Agrippa Postumus Gaius, and Lucius's younger brother, he gets disowned and exiled in AD 7, apparently for being brutal and brutish, unsuitable.
So Augustus has basically no choice left. He has to turn to his stepson, Tiberius, the Claudian.
He recalls Tiberius from his self-imposed retirement on Rhodes, adopts him in AD 4. But even then, there's a condition.
Tiberius has to adopt his own nephew, right? Germanicus.
Yes, Germanicus was young, dashing, incredibly popular, and connected to the Julian line through his mother. So adopting Germanicus was Augustus's way of ensuring the Julian legacy continued, at least symbolically, keeping the public happy.
Tiberius's own path seems to have been pretty unhappy, though. He'd been forced years earlier to divorce his first wife, Vipsania, whom he apparently loved.
To marry Augustus's widowed daughter, Julia the Elder, in 11 BC, a politically vital match linking the Claudians and Julians, but by all accounts a deeply miserable marriage for both of them.
And that bitterness might have contributed to his sudden withdrawal from politics in 6 BC, exiling himself to Rhodes.
It seems likely. Maybe hatred of Julia, maybe jealousy over Augustus, clearly favoring the young princes Gaius and Lucius at the time. Whatever the reason, the sources call that withdrawal almost disastrous. It left a huge potential power vacuum, showing just how fragile a principate still was, how much it depended on Augustus personally.
But time, as it turned out, was on Tiberius's side. He just outlasted everyone else.
It did. By AD 13, Augustus finally grants him equal powers, equal imperium, makes him co-princeps, ensuring, finally, that the transition would be smooth when the time came.
And that time came the next year. Augustus died on August 19th, AD 14, in Nola.
And again, those Livia rumors resurface. Tacitus records the gossip that maybe Livia hastened his end, perhaps with poisoned figs when his health seemed to rally unexpectedly, just to make absolutely sure Tiberius inherited without any last-minute hitches.
Though other interpretations exist, right? That maybe Augustus and Livia, seeing his health failing, kind of orchestrated the timing to ensure the handover happened cleanly while Augustus was still lucid enough to confirm Tiberius, preventing chaos.
That's also plausible. The key point, historically, is that the transition worked. It was peaceful. The Principate survived its first dynastic transfer. A major test passed.
So Tiberius takes over, age 55. He's waited his whole life, watched from the sidelines, the Senate confirms him, but the whole atmosphere seems to shift immediately from the Augustan era, doesn't it?
It really does. He strikes a very different note right away. Comes across as intensely reluctant, almost resentful of the power. Famously refuses the titles Augustus and Pater Patriae.
Which might have been genuine modesty or maybe a political tactic, but the Senate seemed to take it badly.
They interpreted it as dissimulation. Hypocrisy, maybe. It created antagonism from the start. Tacitus gives us that famous, scathing quote attributed to Tiberius, privately mocking the senators as men fit to be slaves. Not a great start to the relationship.
Yet, despite that sour reputation he developed, initially he seems to have been a pretty effective ruler administratively.
Oh, very much so. He genuinely seemed to try and push more responsibility back onto the Senate, though they were probably too used to Augustus's direct control by then to really take it up effectively.
And militarily, he followed Augustus's advice, secured the frontiers, especially along the Rhine.
Yes, his adopted son Germanicus was very active there, quelled some serious mutinies right after Augustus's death, and famously recovered those legionary standards lost at Teutoburg Forest.
Germanicus celebrated a full triumph for that in AD 17. Big morale boost. The first triumph since Augustus's own back in 29 BC.
Tiberius was also fiscally brilliant in his own way. He stuck to Augustus's no expansion policy, focused on efficiency, careful management, and the result, astounding. He left the imperial treasury with nearly 3 billion sesterces when he died.
Wow, so he really consolidated things, left the state financially sound.
Absolutely. Proved his administrative skills, his foresight.
But that early stability, it didn't last personally for him, did it? Tragedy struck.
It did. Germanicus, the popular heir apparent, dies in AD 19, amidst rumors of poisoning, naturally. Then Tiberius' own son, Drusus Julius Caesar, dies in AD 23.
These losses, combined with his sort of natural gloominess and the growing suspicion from the elite, it leads to that infamous retreat.
Yes, in AD 26, Tiberius withdraws permanently
Yep.
to his villa, or rather villas, on the island of Capri, just off the coast near Naples.
And that decision had huge consequences for Rome. He basically leaves the day-to-day running of the capital and effectively the state to his Praetorian prefect.
Lucius alias Sejanus.
Sejanus. His rise to power is meteoric and, frankly, terrifying.
It really is. Tiberius had named him Socius Laborum, partner of my labors. Sejanus already commanded the Praetorian Guard, remember, and he'd cleverly concentrated them into permanent barracks inside Rome.
Giving him thousands of troops right there in the city. Unprecedented power for a prefect.
Absolutely. And with Tiberius isolated on Capri, Sejanus basically runs the government. He starts using the treason laws and Maestas laws to launch these politically motivated purges against senators he saw as rivals.
And the sources suggest his ambition was huge. He got involved with Livilla, Tiberius's niece, Germanicus's widow, maybe plotting to become regent or even emperor himself eventually.
The exact plan is murky, but the ambition was clearly enormous and dangerous.
Until it all comes crashing down in AD 31. Tiberius finally gets convinced, maybe by a letter from Antonia, Germanicus' mother, that Sejanus is plotting against him.
He sends this long, carefully worded, condemning letter to the Senate. Sejanus is arrested in the Senate house itself, executed immediately, followed by brutal treason trials for his family, his associates.
Tacitus paints a really grim picture of the terror and executions that followed. Widespread fear.
And this is where we really need to be careful with the sources, like Tacitus and Suetonius. They absolutely despised Tiberius, characterized him as this paranoid, gloomy, cruel tyrant, especially in his later years on Capri.
But modern historians offer a more nuanced view.
Yes, their accounts are likely colored by their own aristocratic background, their nostalgia for the republic that Augustus and Tiberius had replaced. For instance, one modern historian calculated that over Tiberius's entire 22-year reign, the actual number of treason convictions was relatively small compared to later emperors. Many accused were acquitted.
So while the Sejanus affair definitely damaged his reputation permanently and his isolation wasn't great for governance,
his overall reign did effectively secure the empire's borders, stabilize its finances. He provided the solid foundation that allowed the Pax Romana to continue after him. He did the job, maybe reluctantly, but effectively.
He dies in Messinum, near Naples, in AD 37, age 77. And even his death is surrounded by conflicting accounts.
Natural causes. Or summoned by the new Praetorian prefect, Macro, maybe even by the heir, Caligula, to hasten the succession. The rumors persisted.
And the Senate's final verdict, refusing him the divine honors that Augustus had received, shows just how unpopular he remained with the elite right to the end.
Deeply unpopular. Yet he fulfilled that reluctant duty. He governed the empire Augustus built, kept it functioning, kept it solvent, and handed it over, ready for the next emperor, Caligula, which is a whole other story.
So when we look back at this huge legacy, Augustus, founder of the Roman Empire, over 5 decades of influence, takes a republic shattered by civil war, secures the borders, totally reforms the state's finances, administration, military, and brings in this unprecedented era of peace, all under that amazing constitutional fiction, the Principate.
But the sources, as we've seen, they force us to hold these two contradictory images in our head at the same time. Was he the bloodthirsty, vindictive usurper, the ruthless tyrant who crushed liberty and wiped out his rivals, as some clearly saw him?
Or was he the benign, moderate ruler, the founder of the Pax Romana, the man who brought desperately needed order out of a century of chaos?
He was, somehow, both, wasn't he? His true genius, perhaps, was masking that autocratic reality, the solid, concrete core of absolute military and veto power with this stunning marble veneer of the restored republic.
Giving the appearance of freedom, the forms of the old ways, while concentrating all real power in his own hands, permanently.
So what does this all mean for you listening now? Those incredible building projects, the Arapaces, the Forum of Augustus, they weren't just construction, they were tools. Tools of political re-education, really. Designed to make you celebrate the glorious marble of the Golden Age.
And maybe distract you from looking too closely at that constitutional concrete underneath, the imperial power structure.
Which leaves us with, I think, a pretty provocative thought to mull over. If the foundation of arguably the most successful empire in Western history was built on such a calculated, successful constitutional fiction, what dazzling marble veneers might be concealing cores of concentrated power in the institutions shaping your world today?
Something to think about until our next deep dive.